Hello, and welcome to another edition of Meeting with the Manager. I'm City Manager Erik Tungate. On this month's show, I have the honor of welcoming Tiffany Gunter, who holds over 15 years experience in public administration, higher education, automotive, and the retail industry. And for the past 3 years, she's served as the Interim and Deputy CEO of the Regional Transit Authority of Southeast Michigan. Prior to that, she served as the Dean for Interinstitutional Affairs and Educational Partnerships at Wayne County Community College. She's also served in various roles with SEMCOG, Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, as well as with the Big Three and large retailers. She holds an MPA in Public Administration and a BBA in General Finance Management from the University of Michigan. I've invited her here today to discuss her desire to serve the public and stress her views on a regional mass transit system. Please join me in welcoming her to our show. I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Gunter to the show this month. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
The first question I have to ask you is that you've had 15 years experience in public administration in some capacity. What initially lured you into this business?
Oh, what a fantastic question. So I was working, I guess the first half of my career was spent in the private sector, and I was working in automotive and retail. And I remember one day thinking to myself, you know, I really don't involve myself much with people. I'm a data geek with people personality. And I remember sending a joke email to a former professor of mine, and he sends back this job posting. His name was Greg Thomas. And he sends back a job posting for a public planner, a transportation planner. And I said, what is this? And he says, you've got to interview. You'd be great for it. So I went and I interviewed with SEMCOG, with Carmen Palumbo and Jerry Rowe at the time. And we had this great conversation where, you know, I was young, early 20s, and I had a lot to say, had a lot of opinions, and I thought for sure they wouldn't hire me because I was far too opinionated. And they offered me the job that day. And private sector money and public sector money, very different. Yes. But, you know, I looked at it and I said, this is something that's meaningful, and I want my life to be meaningful and to have a positive effect on those who are around me and people that I love. So that's what made me make the decision to move into public sector work.
You know, to me, those are the kinds of people and those kinds of the kind of thinking that you did. Those are the kind of people we want in public service. I think it's wonderful to hear that. So you've been instrumental in the RTA, as it's called, the RTA, the Regional Transit Authority. We know the millage failed last fall, unfortunately. But first of all, what is the RTA? How did we get here? And then I'm going to talk more about the future and where you see it going in a moment.
Fantastic. So the Regional Transit Authority of Southeast Michigan is an entity that covers the 4-county area in Southeast Michigan. It includes Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, Washtenaw counties. And of those counties, what we have now is a situation where we have different transit operators. So we have SMART in the Wayne, Oakland, Macomb area. We have the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority in Washtenaw County, and we have the Detroit Department of Transportation in the city. And those systems, while they do the best that they can, they really don't connect the region in a meaningful way. And we don't have any level of service higher than fixed route bus. So the RTA was created with a charge to create that connectivity with the fixed route bus system as that layer that makes sure that people have access to jobs and opportunities and education and health care. And at the second, and also to make sure that we're looking at higher order transit that attracts economic development and can really grow and transform the environment with which we live and attract those types of businesses that keep our millennials here, that service our seniors. And the RTA was charged with actually funding it. When we looked at how the system had been funded, we recognized that of all of our peer regions that we compare ourselves against, we were spending about $65 per capita, where everyone else at minimum was at least $115 per capita. So we were underinvesting in this infrastructure, and we know that infrastructure allows for greater investment. So the RTA was charged with sufficiently funding the public transportation system and creating that much-needed connectivity.
So I have to ask, you know, we always talk about how unique the Detroit region is. So, you know, it's one of the largest population-wise, one of the largest regions in our country. So how do we stack up? I mean, in comparison to other cities of our size, how do we stack up?
In comparison to other cities of our size, with respect to public transportation infrastructure, we have a lot of growing to do. You asked how we got here, and I think that that's an important question. What is the RTA? How do we get here? We've had a lot of iterations. You know, people kind of say there was 26 failed attempts. We've been trying for 5 decades to figure out this connectivity issue, and it sounds like a lot, right? It's true. We have been trying for a very long time to get here. When the RTA was created, it was an initiative that was led by our regional leaders in each of the counties to say it's about time that we invest in our infrastructure. And they had the Michigan legislature take action to create the RTA as a legal governmental entity to do the job. Prior to that, we had each of the individual transit agencies doing their best to serve their jurisdictions. What the RTA became was the umbrella organization to push for coordination and to make the system better. So that's how we arrived at the reflex system, where we have nonstop limited services along Woodward and Gratiot.
Which has been very much improved.
It is. People love the service, and we've been seeing increases in ridership like almost every week. We're up to almost 10,000 riders a week or more now on the two lines, which is really great for a new service. It's only been in place for a year. And so the RTA came into existence because finally we said, all the other areas, we look at Chicago, you look at Minneapolis, and I'll use the Cleveland example. They instituted a bus rapid transit system. It's called the Health Line. It was about 8 miles long, and they saw $6 billion worth of economic investment as a result of that decision to invest in their infrastructure. When we look at that and see that we're not doing that and we're not seeing that opportunity come to Southeast Michigan, we knew we had to get something done, and that's why the RTA exists.
Yeah, and especially Cleveland's a great comparative example, because Cleveland is a region that is about half the size of Detroit, correct?
Yes.
So that always is mind-boggling to me, that here we are, this mammoth region with a huge population.
4 million people, yes.
Many thousands of people, many thousand, millions of people, jobs, and we have these unique issues. And so among the other things that you mentioned, what makes it so difficult to get people behind a solution to the regional transit issue?
You know, one of the major issues, and it may be you know, inappropriate for me to say it, but you know, I tell the truth, I get in trouble a lot, is money. It's financing it. When we looked at, and we had this conversation with the public, if I'm not forthcoming, about how the property tax would be spent and how it would be collected and who would pay for what where. When you look at every other area, other metro regions around the nation, how they normally fund their public transportation infrastructure is through a local option sales tax. In Michigan, we don't have that option. Our Michigan Constitution prohibits us from using local option sales tax dollars to pay for transportation infrastructure. So our option was to ask for a property tax or for a vehicle registration excise fee. We knew the vehicle registration excise fee probably wouldn't go over too well, because people with cars would say, why would you charge me more for people who need to use a bus? And that's a fair question. So the property tax, we figure, at least if you're a landlord, you can increase rents to deal with the pass-through of a property tax. And when we looked at property tax collection, that's where the challenges come in. You have Oakland County here. It's a very rich county. And when we compared the numbers and saw that it brought in almost 10 times as much as the city of Detroit could bring in for itself, but it was really important for folks to understand that the RTA legislation required that 85% of whatever was raised in a particular county must go back into the community in which it was collected, to the tune of 85%. And that gave us sort of this 15% regional pool that helped us balance the lines and the frequency of the service, and to make sure that the capital investment would look appropriate for the community as well. And that feature created a financial plan for RTA that was really a feasible one. Over 20 years, we would be able to meet the requirements of the statute and build the infrastructure necessary and operate it as well. That was something that we were really excited about. It was very disappointing to see the millage lose by a percentage point. I think that with a much stronger campaign, the RTA would have been successful, and we would have been on a path to transforming this region right now, which is really necessary and timely. As we saw with the Amazon RFP, we felt like we were scrambling almost to be able to answer that question of access to frequent transit, and we just simply couldn't answer it readily or sufficiently, I think, for the requirements of the RFP.
You know, one of the things that I was privy to the RFP to some degree, certainly not as much as you.
Sure.
I did notice when Amazon's a good basis to discuss, because I think it really sheds light on the issues. But one of the things I noticed in there was that there were about 230,000 or so hotel overnights in Seattle as a result of Amazon's headquarters being there. a year,
Yes.
230,000 hotel overnights a year, just because Amazon is there. So,
Wow.
so we clearly need to build some hotel space, number one. But you have to wonder primarily how the people are getting to the airport and then to those hotels in downtown Seattle. And to me, it was always, let's go for the connection for the airport to downtown first. What are your thoughts about that?
You know, I don't disagree with that at all. The airport connection is a regional connection. You've got 32 million flights in and out of the airport every year.
And growing.
And growing.
Yeah.
And so what the challenge we had in going first, who would go first, is that 85% rule, the return investment. We had to have something that could balance with what you would collect, the time in which you would collect it, and make sure that all residents in each of the counties felt that if they were getting something out of the investment that they've made into public transit. And the trajectory we had for the airport connection was really pretty quick. You know, the Ann Arbor-Detroit commuter rail, you've been working with me on this project since at least 2004. Yeah. That was up for implementation within the first 3 to 5 years. And to have it operational, it would require a transfer at the kind of the airport station to get into the airport jurisdiction space. But that was something that was really early on in the plan, and we thought it was very important. Now, there was a better way in which to connect it through the bus rapid transit. It was a more direct connection, had more stops so more people could use it. That was something that came further down the line, but we saw that airport connection as being highly critical. But we're almost like someone who's been in the desert waiting for water for months, and when you get it, you got to drink the whole cup, right? And that was the way in which we anticipated we would have to build this plan. Was we had to get across this region, and we had to do it in very short order.
Right. So the prospect of this, a similar ballot proposal going forward in 2018, what are your thoughts?
So these are my thoughts. Take off my interim hat for just a moment and say that at least I know the conversation is ongoing. We haven't shut the door on 2018. I shouldn't say we, but the regional leaders have not shut the door on 2018 completely. I do recognize that there are some inherent challenges, knowing that SMART will be on the ballot in 2018 to shore up their local services in Ann Arbor and Washtenaw. The Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority will also be on the ballot in 2018. And we need to make sure, messaging-wise, that people understand the distinction between local bus services and regional services. That is critically important for that to happen. It's not impossible, but it is a challenge that we have to overcome. And, you know, in 2018, the time is narrowing. It has been for quite a while. I would anticipate that January, February of 2018, there has to be a decision made. Either it's a go or no go at that point in time. So stay tuned. I do believe that an answer will be forthcoming in short order.
Good. So I want to talk a little bit about outstate mass transportation.
Sure.
I did my bachelor's degree at Western Michigan University, and I always bring this up as an example because for me, downtown Kalamazoo to Western Michigan University's campus, if you're familiar with this, there's a few miles in between there where to walk that would be a challenge. And I always thought it would be a great place to have a streetcar system of some kind to move students back and forth. Wouldn't be that expensive, relatively speaking. And I think it really provides a perfect example at how the much smaller regions in the outstate areas could benefit from, you know, even more support statewide of legislation. So is there anything statewide that you can speak to that addresses this for the smaller communities even?
You know, I guess I could, but you know, there's a lot of authorities throughout the region. You've got Grand Rapids has the Rapid out there. It's really a decision on how you want to form. You can form 196 authorities. You can form municipal partnerships through Act 250H. You have a lot of different options in which you can build on and develop a transit system in your community. And I would say the best thing that we probably could do is to educate those communities on the options that are available. And I spend a lot of times talking with members of the legislature and helping them understand what the possibilities are. And to grow an RTA such as ours, it would have to be communities that are adjacent to the existing county, so we couldn't necessarily do a leapfrog to outstate area, but it's something that as we grow and develop and people start to see the benefit and truly understand it, we've been such an auto-centric community for so long. One of the things that the RTA will endeavor to do in 2018 is to start developing transit-oriented development studies along like the Woodward Corridor and the Michigan Avenue Corridor, where we can take those typologies and those station locations that people sort of looked at and said, okay, it looks right, but I have no idea how I will use this. And we can start to create that vision for them, show them the access points, show them the possibilities in the community, and you don't just create it for them, you do it with them. And so we'll be out in the communities talking to folks and having a conversation about how they want the interplay and the interoperability of transit to work in their communities. And I do believe that will have a really lasting and positive effect on whatever effort is coming next, because then people can truly say, I understand how this works in my community. Yeah. I don't know that that was ever clear in last year's effect. Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit to be more Oak Park specific now. Okay. What can a community like Oak Park, or even Oak Park specifically, what can we do to support mass transit? I mean, we allow DDOT stops in our community as well as SMART stops. We try to use our SMART credit dollars effectively in terms of shelters and so forth. But we're sort of a one-off. We're in the Coolidge corridor, the 8 Mile corridor. We're not the Woodward corridor. We're not Gratiot. We're not one of these main thoroughfares. So what can we do specifically to assist in this?
You know, I'll tell you, between Mayor McClellan and you last year, you were so incredibly supportive of all that we did. I would ask that you continue to be supportive of that. Allow RTA to perhaps come in and have conversations with your residents to understand that it may not be a direct benefit. While we do have lines proposed for 8 Mile, there's always this opportunity to have greater investment, and that investment grows, and there are benefits that the region receives as a result of investing in public transportation. The more we educate people on that point, and the more they recognize the number of jobs that come. One of the fun things we did last year, I asked MDOT if they would have their team run an independent economic analysis of just the direct spending of RTA if we were to be successful. We didn't look at indirect, we didn't look at induced, we didn't look at anything else, just the simple direct spending. And we saw a $4.4 billion increase in the gross domestic product for RTA, for the region. And we also saw 68,000 jobs that would either stay in the region or be attracted to the region as a result. Those are things that, if you're an Oak Park resident and you don't necessarily have a direct line on the map, SMART has the local service that'll get you to the regional routes. It's all about connectivity and mobility to have better prosperity for the region. And the more that we have our communities understand that, the more likely it is we'll be successful in the next time around.
Yeah, and I'd just say, with regards to Oak Park, from my perspective, that not only did the vast majority of Oak Parkers support the transit initiative last fall, but in Oak Park, and I think I even go farther and say that people feel this way across the board. I mean, obviously, they want to know that their dollars are going to be spent properly. And in this case, in my opinion, it's an infrastructure project. So if we can show them what we're going to build, they generally will support it if we can do it in a feasible, efficient manner. Now, we're going to look at bike share programs and other things here in Oak Park. I know our Economic Development Director, Kim Maroney, is looking at that right now with other communities around us, similar to the one that they have in the city of Detroit. But to me, as the region continues to grow and prosper, because I think really right now we're in a prosper moment, we're in a growth moment in our region's history here, especially with what's going on in the city of Detroit. The communities that embark on these investments in infrastructure and transit and other things like this are going to be the most successful ones.
Absolutely.
Because, and I'm not a planner saying this, by the way, but the built environment does matter.
It does.
Sense of place, place-making amenities, quality of life type stuff, all those buzzwords, those all matter. They actually do matter, it turns out. And I hear this all the time. People wonder why they're seeing all of these jobs going from the suburbs into the city. And I was hoping you could speak to that a little bit. In your view, why is that happening?
Sure. Well, I've worked in downtown Detroit since 2004. So in 2004, at 4 o'clock, pretty much every restaurant shut down. It was a ghost town. Everybody was on M10 or 75 headed back out.
That's why I bought my home shortly, right around that time.
That's right.
It's a different Detroit than it is today.
It's a different Detroit then. So what we've seen happen, that was around the time the Campus Marshes basically opened up again and it was recreated. And we started to see people would come out and have their lunch in the park, and people started to talk about it, and restaurants decided that maybe people want to be here a little bit longer, so they would stay open till 5 or 6 and let you get some dinner. And as Dan Gilbert started to move the Quicken employees downtown and really listen to what they wanted in terms of amenities and how to play at lunchtime and how to have some fun after work, other people saw that, and it's just been like a gravitational pull to this space where I could go to work and I can also have this outlet. And I remember working in a smaller suburban community, I think Centerline at one point in time, and remembering thinking, there's really not much to do outside of work here. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things when you talk about placemaking here in Oak Park, you create that environment that people want to have fun and play in. Nobody really wants to drive that half an hour to downtown or commute even if they can do it in their own community. But if they feel they can't, they are attracted to that and they will migrate towards that. So creating that's what we're seeing happening. And so from 2004 to now, it's like working in a completely different place. Yeah. And it's great to see it, but I do want to see all communities, all boats rise as a result of this newfound knowledge that we have with respect to placemaking. And the mobility sharing space is a whole lot different than it was 3 years ago, 2 days ago. These TNCs, these ride shares, the Ubers, the Lyfts, the Splits of the world that provide these services for people really causes RTA to kind of grapple with itself on what does the future of transportation look like, and ensuring that we don't build something that's obsolete in the future. You do have to have bones. I always believe you have to have bones in your system, some type of structure. And that's what those long haul fixed route lines are for. But in between there, how you move people around, that's something that we've got to talk to our community about, talk to our residents about. We can recreate that. There's an opportunity there, and we don't want to miss that either.
Without question, and I've known you for several years, obviously, so I know you well enough to say that no matter what you do, I know you'll be successful, and will it be to the region's benefit. All right, so last question, and I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't ask this question, but do we land Amazon?
Oh, Eric. I thought I was free from Amazon. You know, I've read virtually every article that's been written, all of the rankings, and there's some real competition out there. But the Detroit metro area is special, and I would never count us out. I'd never count out the efficacy of our ability, our resilience to do anything. I do believe it's a bit of a long shot, I'll be honest, but anything's possible, so I'll leave it there.
Great answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Eric.
I now have the privilege of welcoming in our Public Safety Director, Steve Cooper, to our show, as always. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
My first question I want to ask you is, what are the top issues currently facing our department?
One of the top issues facing the department, if I had to just be candid with you, is that we are in need of an additional community resource officer. One of the reasons that I mentioned the addition of a community resource officer, and like I said, you just recently acknowledged Officer Benson at one of your recent council meetings as your employee of the month, is that the numerous duties that are attached to that assignment. Like I said, he manages 3 school districts. He has 15 crossing guards that he oversees. He manages our volunteer parking traffic enforcement program. Also, he mediates a lot of our neighborhood issues with youth and some of the adults. He's very involved with the seniors in the community. Anytime that public safety has to be represented at different events, then Devin Benson is our guy. And we've talked about it: Halloween Spooktacular, Winterfest, Summerfest, our Fall Fest, all of our block club events. He starts those programs. Just a litany of assignments that we're seeing, and I really want to get the second community resource officer. And I know we've had kind of discussions off camera about that as well, and he's sharing that sentiment. So that's something that hopefully we can get accomplished here in the near future.
And you know, I said this during the council meeting where he was honored as our Employee of the Month. Devin has an innate ability to make people feel comfortable. He's got all the technical skills and education and all of that to go along with it, but the innate ability to make people feel comfortable is something that you really can't teach. And he is a natural. And I don't know that a lot of people in our community, and really, Director, you have the same ability, and I don't know that a lot of people in our community really understand how fortunate we are to have that in these positions, in these very key public safety positions. It's really one of a kind in a lot of ways. It's one thing to manage the department and interact with the public from a technical perspective, but it's a completely different thing to be able to do all of that with a sense of emotional intelligence that's far beyond what the job requires even. And we have that here, and I think because we have that here, it's a very, very special department under your leadership.
And with that being said, obviously with an additional community resource officer, we would have to go through the same process. Sure. I am confident that we have you know, great men and women that work here that the shoes would be big to try and stand next to Devin, but with his assistance, I think we would be okay.
Sure. Now, here we go into the winter season, even though today doesn't really feel like that, of course, but we are expecting snow, obviously, during the winter months. So what are some of the trends and things that the public can be aware of as we head into these winter months? You know, first and foremost, obviously, is in snow emergencies to remove your vehicle from city streets and so forth.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. The snow emergency is huge. It seems like every year, you know, we kind of go through the same routine as far as saying, hey, make sure that the vehicles are off the street. We try and give our explanation of why we need those vehicles to be off the street. And just to reiterate to the public, the main reason is so that we are able, number one, to get our emergency equipment throughout the different areas of the neighborhoods in case there's an emergency. Not only our police vehicles, which we drive the SUVs now, if we have a medical emergency where we have to get an ambulance down a street or God forbid, a fire truck, to try and traverse and navigate through streets that are half plowed, or you have cars that are you know, parked on snowbanks, that makes it you know, just that much more difficult. And I've always said, when you are responding to emergencies, you know, seconds count, and they do count. So, you know, we beg the community, you know, during our snow emergencies, please pay attention, move your vehicles off the street so that our Department of Public Works are able to get their snow plows through and actually get the streets in the pristine shape and fashion that they're accustomed to being left in. All
right, so what other crime trends and things can our public do to remain safe during these months?
Well, one of the things that just, I guess in the form of what has actually been occurring in the last, you know, month or so, larcenies are picking up. We're at the holiday season right now, and it seems that, you know, it's a crime of opportunities where you have the retail frauds where people are going into the stores and they're shoplifting. Christmas spirit, the holidays, everybody's feeling festive. Sometimes purses, valuables are left in shopping carts unattended, and a lot of theft actually occurs. Unlocked vehicles where people are trying to, you know, grab a quick valuable, whether it be a cell phone, a laptop, loose change that's left in the ashtray holder. So we're telling our residents to, you know, just be cautious and do some of the basic things that that we expect. You know, be alert of your surroundings. You know, make sure that you lock your car doors. If you're going to be out, for our ladies, we ask that, you know, if you don't have to carry the clutch purse with the wallets and everything in it, just you know, maybe if you could carry your monies or your funds in a small wallet and secure it somewhere, you know, on your person real discreetly, that would help out a tremendous amount.
Sure. All right, so last question. One of the programs that we've somewhat recently instituted that I don't think our public knows that much about now is our traffic enforcement detail program. And I was hoping you would talk a little bit about it because, you know, one of the main concerns that not only do I get, but I know you get and others in the department get, is about speeding in the neighborhoods. And so could you talk about this program and what we're doing to address this issue?
Absolutely. Speeding in the neighborhood, I will tell you, is our #1 complaint that we receive on a daily basis. And not only in Oak Park, but just throughout all of the communities here, usually in the metropolitan area. One of the things that you were so gracious to do was to allow our department to run a traffic enforcement detail. And this is an overtime detail, and it's not taken away from our normal response. It's in addition to that. So we have been very successful, I guess if you want to call that success, as far as catching violators, speeding through the different interior streets throughout the community, as well as some of our main thoroughfares such as Coolidge and Greenfield and 9 Mile. And we are very aggressive. We are taking pretty much a no-tolerance approach as it relates to the speeding motorists. And to be honest with you, a decent amount of our violators have been some of our residents. So, not only do, we don't want to issue any violations, but, we want our residents to be especially aware that they need to be cautious and cognizant of their speed, just as anyone else who's traveling through the community. One of the things, just to kind of piggyback on that, distracted driving has been one of our concerns, and it's caused a lot of accidents. And unfortunately, we just recently had a fatality because of a similar type of episode. But the number one thing that when we speak of with distracted driving are the cell phones. Yeah. People are either answering the cell phones, they're dialing a number on the cell phones, and it's hard to believe, but they're actually texting and driving, on the cell phones. And you don't have to be distracted only by using a cell phone. It could be a number of things: reaching in the back seat for a package that may have fallen in between the seats, eating, changing a radio station, anything that's taking your attention away from the roadway and your driving. We just ask that our motorists out here just be extra cautious. It only takes a split second for an accident to happen, and it could change your life for the worse for quite a while. Absolutely. So we are, like I said, we are aggressively running our traffic enforcement detail. We'll do that. We'll continue that through the winter. I don't want the residents to think that because it's getting a little chilly out, maybe that the roads are going to be snow covered, that we are going to kind of take a break or take the winter off. Absolutely not. We will be out in force, and it's for the safety of everyone.
Well, I want to thank you for your time this month, and I want to wish you and your family a happy holiday.
Thank you, sir. Same to you.
Thank you. I hope you found this month's show to be informative. There is no doubt we live in interesting times here in metropolitan Detroit, with the future ahead of us. Mass transportation will undoubtedly be a topic of discussion for years to come as our region continues to grow and expand, and the debate over how to move people from point A to point B as efficiently as possible continues. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Meeting with the Manager, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.